We have a developing story. Breaking news, the D in Big D stands for big deal. Zeke Elliott has agreed to terms on a new contract with the Cowboys. Does that mean Dallas is set up for a Super Bowl run? And does it, in fact, create more questions than answers for the rest of their stars looking for contracts? We have all of that covered from every different direction as we thank you for getting up with us from New York. Neek is here. Mr. T is here. Jeremy Fowler is here with the very latest as we have a day that begins with breaking news. It was 6:51 a.m. Eastern time this morning, so an hour and 9 minutes ago, that our Todd Archer reported Ezekiel Elliott has agreed to a 6-year, $90 million contract extension with the Cowboys. According to our Ed Werder, $50 million of that is guaranteed, which means the 40-day holdout is over. Zeke expected to be at practice today, and that is Todd Archer, the man who delivered the news this morning. Todd, just how did this finally get done this morning?
Well, Greeny, when I went to bed last night around midnight Eastern, this deal was not done. And there was some real trepidation as to whether it would get done. But then the text message came over that they have a deal. Zeke will be at practice. And it comes down to the language of these contracts can be convoluted, especially when you factor in the collective bargaining agreement expiring here after the 2020 season. They were finally able to get their arms around all of that contractual language, and the Cowboys have the player that they always wanted to have, the guy that they view as a central piece to a Super Bowl run, and Elliott can lay claim to being the highest paid running back in football. So from those two perspectives, both sides are happy.
For what you know, as far as those little details that they were working at, what was the sticking point and how did they arrive at some sort of conclusion?
Well, some of it revolved around the 30% rule where a player's income cannot increase by more than 30% each year after the collective bargaining agreement expires. So it took some probably some funny math to get around all of those things and how these agents and teams, cap guys, how they manage all that. And you know, that has kind of been a sticking point. To come to make him the highest paid running back probably wasn't as difficult because there are ways that the Cowboys can spin a victory. If you look at the length of the deal, it's not $15 million, about 12.8. If you look at it from Zeke's perspective, well, it is 15 on the extension. That makes him the highest paid back. So again, like I said, this kind of gets both sides feeling good about themselves, that they did a deal that will be good for both, beneficial for both.
Todd, to the best of your knowledge, we know that there have been some off-the-field incidents involving Zeke Elliott over the course of his NFL career. Are there any provisions regarding that in the new agreement?
Other than the standard language that is in all contracts, I'm not entirely sure, but I will tell you this. When we asked Jerry Jones that question, I believe after the last preseason game against Tampa Bay, he said he was comfortable with everything with Elliott off the field. So that tells you that maybe the Cowboys aren't as hung up on what happened that led to his suspension in 2017, the reason why he got called to the principal's office here this offseason for what happened in Vegas. But clearly, if he were to violate this or he were to have another suspension, there are penalties in place under this contract that would probably void the guaranteed money.
All right, Todd Archer, well done. Again, with the breaking news this morning, about an hour and 14 minutes ago, a deal has been reached and Zeke Elliott will be in camp with the Cowboys and practicing today, and we would assume thus on the field on Sunday. Let me bring this out to the table here, and I'm going to bring Marcus Spears into the conversation in just a minute. But one of the big questions that hovers over all of this now is at a time when everyone is trying to get their quarterback signed, the Cowboys have signed everyone but the quarterback. It seems they've sort of left that for last in this circumstance with Dak Prescott, and that money continues to climb. We're going to get you to Jared Goff in a minute, but he became yesterday the richest quarterback of all time. Where is Dak Prescott in all of this, Jeremy Fowler?
He's waiting. He's watching all this money flow in. He's sitting back comfortable because he knows eventually he's going to get paid. It might not be this year, but they have 4 or 5 days to get this done. He is next on the docket for the Cowboys, but there's nothing imminent right now. They've talked. At least they've talked. Amari Cooper and the Cowboys, there's really no movement right now with him getting a deal done. So the Cowboys have a lot of work to do, but Dak is clearly the priority now. If they're going to get something done, it's got to happen.
Here it is. Here's Zeke Elliott. You see the names on your screen. Lyle Collins, who they got done yesterday, Jalen Smith about 2 weeks ago, and DeMarcus Lawrence earlier in this offseason. Mr. T.
I'll tell you what Jeremy just said, I totally agree with, which time has been on Dak Prescott's side from a standpoint. Jared Goff just made a lot more money for Dak Prescott. The Cowboys cannot let him go. We saw that once, Dom, in terms of Kirk Cousins, a very average quarterback, get $90 million in guaranteed from the Minnesota Vikings. So if I'm Dak Prescott, I like going last. It really helped my position.
All right, Nick, I'm going to get you in on this in a minute, but let me bring Marcus Spears into the conversation, the longtime Cowboy who knows the ins and outs of this as well as anybody. Marcus, we've been talking about this, it feels like forever. The Zeke deal is done. What's your reaction?
My reaction is wonderful. Look, first of all, there's value back in the running back market. I think everybody understands that. As we continue to have this conversation, people have to remember Le'Veon Bell was playing under a franchise and Todd Gurley was up. For Zeke to get a deal done at this period in time, and we talked about it ad nauseum, Greeny and Mike T. He did not have to get a contract right now. The Dallas Cowboys did not have to pay him. And I think that alone makes this more significant than any other running back contract or conversation, that they value this position, especially when it's built around what Zeke is as a running back and how this team is being structured. We just saw La'el Collins get a new contract as well. Don't think that wasn't in mind, that we'll have arguably the best or one of the best running backs in the NFL running behind the offensive line that we want to keep intact. The deal is wonderful for Zeke, it's wonderful for the Cowboys, and it's wonderful for what they want to do as a football team. We can get caught up in the money and the guarantees, but here is the structure of this football team, literally the piece that they needed to come back together in order for them to be a good football team on the field. And at the end of the day, that's what everybody's concerned with.
Yes, his lone leverage in all of this has been they're a Super Bowl team with him, they're not without him, and everyone knows that. Nick, you've been shaking your head a lot this morning.
Well,
what is your reaction?
I think he said, well, you haven't let me talk, saving the best for last, obviously. But I think what Marcus said about him being the linchpin to their team is important. It's not just the offense, it's the defense. That team has had the fewest drives as a defense of anybody since 2016. That's in part because of what Zeke Elliott does on the offensive side of the ball. So he means a lot there. And I think, along with what Marcus said, I don't know why, but I get so happy whenever anybody gets paid. Yeah. So I'm not going to get any of this money, but it feels good to see a guy get paid, a guy who's worked that hard and earns it. And I do remember, I want to bring to your attention that this whole offseason, and God bless Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones for talking and saying all types of nonsense, because it gave stuff for us to talk about all season. But all they've been saying has been nonsense. They said we're not going to reset the market. Not only did you reset the market, you set a precedent of signing a guy 2 years earlier. So you paid him more than anyone else has got paid, and you set this precedent that other GMs might have a problem.
In case there's anyone not aware of it, you were the president of the Players Association at one time. So
yeah.
your knowledge of all of this stuff is informed by that.
Yeah, I have plenty of experience with Jerry Jones, and it might come off like I don't like him when I say that what he's saying is nonsense. I do like him. He's a fun guy to be around. But I know when his mouth opens, that sometimes lies come out. Quite often lies come out, and we've seen a lot of lies this offseason.
In fairness to him, that's true in a lot of negotiations with a lot of people, right? They say what seems beneficial on their side. But at the end of the day,
they don't have to say it publicly.
Let's talk about the fact that he just reset the running back market with a player who had 2 years left on his contract and the ability to franchise him not once but twice after that. What does that mean?
I love it. And you mentioned that I was the president of the Players Association. The only way you normally get things done is with collective action. But we're seeing individual action, something that we'd never see in the NFL. Individual action like this, having this much leverage and getting this much power. And
Mr. T, you were a GM, and so you know the way these things are. The other owners going to be mad at Jerry for doing this? Because this is now a precedent. I mean, I don't even want to talk about Saquon Barkley and when he might have to go in there and tell the Giants he wants a new deal. This is a new precedent now. A 3-year rookie had 2 years left on his contract. Will the other owners be upset about this?
Well, I don't think so from this standpoint, because I think you nailed it, Green, because the Dallas Cowboys this year are Super Bowl contenders with Zeke Elliott. Let's compare that with the Chargers situation. Melvin Gordon tried the same. He ran the same play. He lost. Right. So I think this is much more aberrational. And I think Dom makes a really good point. Last year, the Dallas Cowboys were a top 5 team in time and possession, which made their defense a lot better. So I think Zeke has value that's more than just the running back position. So I think the other owners will look at this as this is a very unique situation.
Let me go back to Swagoo, and let's get to the stuff that I think most fans care about. I love the minutia of all of this collective bargaining stuff, but I don't know that most football fans do. Marcus Spears, here's what most football fans care about. With Ezekiel Elliott now back and hopefully better than ever, are the Cowboys the best team in your mind in the NFC?
No, they're not the best team, but they definitely should be a team contending to win the NFC. I think the Saints, Greeny, you know my pick in the NFC, it's the New Orleans Saints. It's because Drew Brees is going to try to decapitate every football team that he plays against. But with that being said, what Zeke has done for this franchise and for this organization, what he brings to the field, and Don pointed to it, Mike pointed to it as far as the defense, but offensively, Look, there are a few players we get in professional sports that literally get other players paid simply because they're on the team. Zeke is one of those guys that's going to get Dak Prescott paid. He's going to open up downfield for some receiver. If not Amari Cooper, they'll bring some receiver in and they'll give him some money in order to play. But Zeke, he affects everything that this team is doing. And usually players don't recognize that importance they have to a football team or a franchise. But Zeke did, and give his agent Rocky Arsenault credit for both of them recognizing how much of an impact they have on this football team, not just offensively, defensively, and in the narrative of being Super Bowl contenders.
You said a lot of smart things, except that the Saints are better than them. So I disagree with you there. This roster is stacked. They may be the most talented, and I think they're probably one of the best teams in NFC above the Saints. But everything else you said is right about Ezekiel Elliott.
Let's talk about the immediacy of this, okay? He's got a deal now. It's Wednesday morning. They will practice today. Ezekiel Elliott and I have very little in common, but we have both been to Cabo. And in my experience in Cabo, I've never seen anyone in the gym. So my question is, I get that he's not been there for the same circumstances that I've been there for. But what can we expect from him realistically this Sunday against the Giants?
Every game's precious in the NFL. You can't give any of them away. So I imagine that they're going to put him out there early. They're going to test him out this week and see how he feels. And if they feel good about it, they're going to put him out there early. And if he plays well, they're going to keep riding him. That may be a mistake, but that's what they're going to do because that's what football teams do.
Two words, Mike Tannenbaum, soft tissue.
Absolutely. Darrell Revis is the other two words that come out of my mouth. And I've had experience with this, and the Giants and the Redskins are their first two games. Division games are about a game and a half. So it's not necessarily the quantity of the plays. It's going to be the quality. So maybe it's 10 or 15 plays.
There's a difference between being a cornerback and a running back. Everyone knows that being a cornerback is much more difficult. Right. You go out there and you play corner, and you don't know what you're going to run. Right. You might have to run a go. You might run a slant. You might have to come up and support on tackle. Putting a running back out there is different because you can decide before the snap if we're going to have him run a deep go, or if we're going to have him run the ball, or we're going to have him pass protect.
Go ahead, Marcus. I'm going to let Marcus jump in.
We can have all these conversations. Look, this deal got done at this period of time for a reason. It's because he going to play, and they're going to put him out there against the New York Giants, a divisional opponent where this game is very important. Look, we can talk soft tissue, and I feel you, Mike T, because you've had to deal with numbers and players making sure that they healthy, but there ain't no way in hell Zeke Elliott ain't going to be a big part of this game plan and what they want to do. Kellen Moore doesn't have time. Jason Garrett doesn't have time. And the conversation that we just previously had about the Cowboys being Super Bowl contenders, they ain't waiting. They ain't waiting to get this deal done. I know it's 40 days and everybody talk about, look, this deal got done in this period in time so Zeke could be available to play against the New York Giants. Because the worst thing possible that could have happened is that they lost to the New York Giants because they couldn't run the football.
Swagoo, my point is this. He may not be ready to take that full load. Tony Pollard's been there, taking every meeting, every rep, all the preseason games. So my point is it may be 10, 15 snaps in the fourth quarter where he's out there just pass protecting. Let's say it's a one-score game. Giants are bringing a lot of pressure. I'm sure Kellen Moore, Jason Garrett rather have Zeke Elliott out there as a pass protector than Tony Pollard.
Mike, you see that number that they got before that M down there on that tagline? They ain't waiting.
Jeremy Fowler, jump in here.
Yeah, 2 years ago, Le'Veon Bell sat out, came in on a Monday, and he was rusty. You could see the legs were slow, and he only got a handful of carries at Cleveland that game. So I expect him to play and play pretty well, but I don't expect 20 carries back.
Okay, let me just very briefly interject into the conversation, and we will get much more into this as we go. But they're playing the Giants. Saquon Barkley will be on the other sideline. Saquon Barkley has played one of the 5 years he is currently signed for with the New York Giants and has proved himself to be maybe the only back in the whole league better than Ezekiel Elliott. Marcus, if you were talking to Saquon Barkley right now, what would you tell him?
Continue to play well. I know it's a gray situation because they are not going to be a very good football team in New York, but it's getting close. I mean, we look at this CBA, and it may have been more beneficial for Saquon to wait, depending on how the CBA is played out. The money is only going to go up. The league is making money. It's in good standing. So he may be on course maybe in 2 to 3 years to get paid more than any running back has ever been paid, and we all expect that because of his talent. But I would be patient if I was Saquon at least another 2 years. possibly, and see where the Giants go as well. Here's the thing, G. He has to figure out, too, what they're going to do, what Gettleman is going to do from a franchise standpoint. The one thing Zeke and his agent had the ability to do is see the Cowboys commit to making sure that they had a really good football team. Now, I'm not sure in the money structure if that was all at the forefront of his mind, but I'm sure seeing Travis Frederick come back, Tyron Smith, I'm sure seeing La'el Collins get signed. Obviously, these guys have paid attention to what the Dallas Cowboys are building. Saquon is going to have to be he's going to have to pay very close attention to what the Giants' plan is going down the road before he decides if he wants to sign there long term.
Okay, Marcus, stay with me here because we had another big story where we were going to begin the show this morning. Otherwise, is the quarterback situation. Jared Goff signing a deal yesterday that makes him, an extension with the Rams, the richest football player that ever lived in terms